Friday afternoon, evening.
Yeah.
It's that time again, boys and girls.
It's time when the weekend starts.
Time when the weekend is within range.
You know,
That's what it is.
sometimes I envy my colleagues. Many of them are in Israel, and their weekend starts at the end of Thursday.
Correct. But then their week also starts at the beginning of Sunday. So there's trade-offs.
Yes, but then that's when they feel jealous. But I don't feed on other people's jealousy, so that's okay. I'm just jealous of them for Thursday.
And there you go. If you are here with us for the very first time, welcome. You may not know who we are. My name is Darren Pope. This over here to my right is Victor Farsick, and we are the host. See some things spinning. Okay, we're back. That was weird. And we'll talk about that in a second. I can't guarantee what that was, but it will probably loop in with what we're getting ready to talk about. And, life goes on. And Wednesdays, the podcast comes out. Friday, we do this show. And we'll talk about some other news. It was episode 98. Bring up. And we had an interview with ETL Schwartz. I'm assuming you can still hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
You're just doing work. Okay.
Go, Darren.
Okay. You're just doing work. That's what matters there. So we had ETL on this week from Commodore, if I'm saying it even close to right. I noticed that he was on live with
Brett Fisher.
Brett yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't get to watch it. Did you watch any of it?
Maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Only. Not because it wasn't interesting, it was, but, it's in between things.
Right. And what ETL told us, which wasn't on the recording, our podcast was his first foray into anything like that. So we were the warm-up for Brett, I guess. But it was talking about, oh dear, what was it? Kubernetes troubleshooting, right?
Troubleshooting, debugging, yes, exactly. Figuring out what's wrong.
Sorry, my dog's
and whether
over there.
there is anything wrong.
My dog's making noises over there, and I cannot tell what he's doing. Yes, so Kubernetes troubleshooting, I'm dog troubleshooting right now. Okay, but anyway, if you haven't listened to that yet, go take a listen to it. And by the way, there is Vladislav just on cue. Thanks for showing up, Vladislav, and everybody else that's here with us live today. We were talking about, we just had spinning blank screens there for a moment. Right? Did you see that too?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, maybe it was just on my side. Let me go ahead and share. We talk about DevOps a lot. We're going to start out today talking about HugOps. You've heard of HugOps before, right?
No.
Have you?
No. No idea. HugOps.
So HugOps is this thing that people, it's like, I'm not happy that it's happening to you. I wish it wasn't happening to you, but I'm here for you. I'm thinking about you. Right? Even competitors will do that to each other. It's like, boy, we don't want to see that happen. And OVH, which is a hosting provider in France, or at least where this was, they had a data center, a physical building burned down. And this was one of 4, if I remember right. I was looking at a bunch of Twitter streams talking about this. There's a big ad. And completely lost one of the buildings. Impacted another one of the buildings. It was bad. In fact, this was from the founder and chairman. SBG2 completely destroyed. Whoops. Oh, it's taking me over to Twitter.
No.
SBG1 partially destroyed, and they were protecting 3 and 4. I haven't even looked at the rest of it since I saw this.
I don't know SBG, so I might be saying something silly.
Yeah.
But I assume that SBG 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever they have, are different zones.
No, they are they are 4 different data centers within the same zone.
Okay.
So 4
There's
physical
the problem.
buildings side by side ish, not side by side, but close to each other. Now they do have zones, but this is the case to where, okay, this is Strasbourg. They're all together, and off it goes. So this is why we're saying hug ops. Like you don't even want people to ever have these kinds of things happen, not even to your competitors, because you don't want to ever have to deal with it yourself. Not good karma. So Vladislav, you're saying this is nearby you by saying this is close to me. So I saw some people. It's like, okay, my VM was inside of 2, and I didn't have any backups. How do I get going again? Right, because it's like the old school rack space. I have a VM running in this building. It's dangerous.
Yeah, but it's almost. I feel terrible for the data centers and the company behind it and all those things. That's absolutely terrible. But for people hosting there's a lesson learned. You need to back up your data.
Well, it's not even.
And when I say data,
go ahead.
Go ahead. When I say data, I mean literally data from databases, and this is also going back now to the subject that we are talking a lot about, GitOps. I assume that you have manifest stored in Git. I assume that you can recreate it somewhere else like this. The only problem is data, right? Problem if you didn't back it up.
Well, and the thing is if you're architecting your application that it is a pure monolith and you have 0 disaster recovery because, hey, I'm running in the cloud, I don't have to worry about it. We quickly see right here that even the cloud has failures.
Oh, yeah. But how many, Google had countless failures in 2020, right? Almost, I'm exaggerating a bit, but every day I wake up, I hear about another failure of some data center in Google or Azure or AWS. That's happening all the time.
Well, I think, it's sort of unfair to compare Google to OVH, at least in this particular case, because it's a service, right? If you're using services within a provider, it's on them to manage it. If it's a managed or primarily managed service, but if you're self-managing within a provider, which you could do with GCP, right? You could just run VMs or AWS or anywhere else. It would be the same type issue.
Yeah. I was more referencing your comment before. Even cloud goes down. I'm saying that we need to assume that it goes down all the time. Kind of that must be the assumption, right? No matter whether it's a service, whether you're self-hosting cloud or what's not, clouds go down. Yeah. Hardware goes down. Now, it could be a server, it could be data center, it could be zone, it could be even whole region. Things go down all the time.
Yep. It's no good, but it happened. So let this be a cautionary tale. If you don't have an active disaster recovery plan that you execute on not just an annual basis, probably at least 4 times a year. Because if you do it once a year, you're not going to remember it. 4 times a year, there's a chance you to remember it. What you really want is to not even have yourself in this situation. Don't architect applications if you can to put you in this corner.
Realistically, I would say that, again, I'm talking about data, what's in databases, what's not. Realistically, once a day is absolute bare minimum. Because it's horrible if you lose hours of data accumulated over time. That's horrible. Yeah. But if you're talking about more than a day of data, that's I don't know how to qualify it even. That's
what I'm saying is, I'm just saying, you need to have whatever your disaster recovery plan is. You need to be able to exercise it, not just once a year. You need to be at least once a quarter, preferably more often than that. I mean, hopefully the applications have been architected in such a way that even if you had, like the case with OVH, I completely lose a physical building and where the parts of my application that were running there, okay, I've lost that capacity for right now, but everything else is actually still working okay because I was spread across buildings 1 through 4 as well, or the other 3 buildings that were on that site, or across zones.
There's a paradox that I experienced in quite a few cases in companies that, hey, people tell me, yeah, we have disaster recovery. It's working like a charm, whatever, right? And then when I ask them, okay, let's do a disaster. Let's do it right now, right? And then there is always a story that actually explains how actually that's not doable.
Which tells you
because it's too much work. It could be days of work of somebody, but then it's silly. It's not a disaster recovery. I mean, it is, officially, right? But practically, it's almost useless, right? Or we might use data and stuff like that, right? So people are faking it too much.
So we may have spoken about this before. I had a client that they had they're self-hosting everything on premise. They have 2 physical data centers in different parts of the country. And for 6 months out of the year, one data center is the primary hot data center. The other data center is the standby. Now, that doesn't mean they don't have hot in both data centers, but in the case to when they've got, data center A and data center B, and these are the primaries. So when they do the failover, they actually just flip places. So you never have a complete data center down, but you're always exercising twice a year at least, and they run hot so that every 6 months they switch over, and now instead of data center A being your primary hot, now data center B is your primary hot. Now, is once every 6 months okay? Well, for them it is. But they're also coming up with better strategies going forward. So,
realistically, disaster recovery should be uneventful thing. Now, restoring the system that failed to the good state, that is complicated, right? Because that can be caused by many, many, many things, right? But doing disaster recovery, switching from one place to another, if that is not uneventful, then it's not good.
Right. And that may be your first step that you have to be able to do, is just getting flipped over to that DR site. But I would still push more. It's like, look, if the applications aren't architected to be resilient for this, it's like, okay, our data, so let's say the database, let's say we're able to be stateless, at least from an application perspective, everywhere. But the databases are the databases. There's persistent storage there. So how do we architect our data stores in such a way that they are highly available across regions? And there's ways to do that, but then you also have to get into conflict resolution and other things that until you've done it, you will not even realize that you have to do it. But okay.
And all that to conclude that the best thing is to just let somebody else manage your database.
Yes. It seems like I've heard somebody say that before. Oh yeah, it was you. Let's move on. Linkerd 210. You seemed semi-excited about this.
I mean, there is nothing truly exciting, and I like that.
They have dinosaurs. They've got
Huh?
dinosaurs. They've got dinosaurs.
Exactly.
This is a great picture, right? So we should be excited about at least the Lego dinosaurs.
Exactly. No, it's a good thing when it's not extremely exciting. That means that it's more or less mature something. But I'm excited about extensions. I like that they brought the base installation to be much smaller, that now you opt in for things instead of opting out. Mm-hmm. Because realistically, when you think about it, that like things like Jagger and Prometheus and Grafana and all those things that are now optional and available through Viz are things that usually in a serious setup you install separately of Linkerd, right? You don't wait for Linkerd to set up Prometheus, for example.
Right.
Typically. So it's a good thing. I like opting in instead of opting out for those specific things.
This one seemed interesting to me, though. The multi-cluster support for all TCP connections. Used to it was only HTTP. Now it's all TCP. That opens up a lot of interesting use cases.
Exactly.
But, okay. Anyway. And then lots more, and they go into the full list. So, yeah, the extensions concept, taking it down from 200 meg at startup to from where it was at roughly 500. Way to go, Linkerd. Okay, next up we've got, as I didn't scroll down, Curiefense. It's implemented, or the name is based off of Marie Curie, and it's an application security platform. It's also CNCF, so this is one of the 19,100,000 or whatever the number is of sandbox projects now. Have you looked recently at the landscape poster?
No, my eyes cannot comprehend. I have my brain starts melting when I look at it. I don't want to look at it. But to me, this kind of links in a way back to potentially Linkerd and similar.
Yeah.
To me, this already starts feeling kind of that this might be better off inside service mesh. I think that we are already talking about service mesh domain. That does not mean that we shouldn't have new projects and all those things, definitely, right?
Yeah.
But when I set up service mesh, I expect it to be handling those use cases.
And typically they don't, right?
Depends
At least not
what
to
they
this
are.
level. I mean, because this
yes,
has a,
I haven't.
right. This has this has a web application framework, and application layer DDoS. Right, that would be asking too much of just a plain service mesh.
It depends how you define DDoS. Basically, DDoS protection, and I might be wrong here, so correct me, is really about setting up how many retries and what are the timeouts. Basically, when you should retry something and when you should stop retrying something, right? You really want to stop retrying requests when you're DDoSed, right?
Yeah.
Or at least limiting. And from that perspective, it is in domain of service mesh, really. That's what service mesh do. Now, I haven't tried this yet, so I'm not saying that this is not doing it better and what's or not, but it is in a way domain of service mesh.
Yeah.
And I have that conflicting feeling that I'm a type of person that is exploring, experimenting with at least a couple of new tools every single week. Kind of that's my mojo, right? But on the other hand, I'm feeling that fatigue of so many tools. I don't want to stop progress, but I also want to stop madness that is going on, which is conflicting, right?
So, and this is, you call it service mesh. Okay, so let's walk through everything we just talked about. We started with OVH. Well, let's assume I had a Kubernetes cluster running in all 4 buildings, right? And I was using a service mesh based on Linkerd with 210, which gave me the multi-cluster across cluster boundaries, right? And then on top of that, I've got this running that covers me no matter how I'm getting my ingress into the Strasbourg area, no matter which building it was, right? So this all builds on top of each other. All these layers of that onion continues to get more and more confusing.
Yes. Exactly. It is very confusing. At least I'm confused.
Okay.
Which is part of my job, to be confused, I guess.
Be confused, to save confusion for everybody else. And speaking of confused, Why would we say goodbye to minikube?
I understand this is not the first time, actually. I've seen similar statements, articles. Kind is basically supposed to replace minikube.
Why? Why is that being said?
It's being said because it's better, it's more efficient to run in containers than not. But I don't see that as true. Because, I mean, let me rephrase that. So, Kind was born and started with as a project that runs on Linux. And over there, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, you want a cluster? I'm going to spin up a container that runs your cluster. You want 2 clusters? I'm going to spin up 2 containers, and each of them is going to pretend to be a cluster. Makes perfect sense. And then it was made to work in Mac and Windows. And the problem in Mac and Windows is that you cannot run containers. You can run containers only as entities on top of inside VMs, right? So that's why we have Docker Desktop for Mac, Docker Desktop for Windows, and not Docker Desktop for Linux. So Docker Desktop is effectively a VM with operating system that can run containers, and then we run containers. So to run Kind, I need to have Docker. I'm a Mac user, right? So I'm talking about Mac now or Windows. I need to have Docker. And Docker is a Kubernetes cluster. So to me, it feels not very good, the idea that I'm going to use a Kubernetes cluster in which I'm going to run container, and inside of that container, there will be another Kubernetes cluster. It doesn't sound right to me, right? Now, if Kind would be running like minikube and say, hey, I'm a standalone something, minikube also creates a VM and stuff like that. So when I use minikube, I don't need Docker Desktop. So it's Docker Desktop against minikube. Kind is minikube against Kind and Docker Desktop combined. And Docker Desktop already gives me Kubernetes cluster, so why do I need Kind? Now, there are a couple of things that are good. And that's that I can have simulation of multi-cluster setup. I cannot have more than one cluster with minikube. I cannot have more than one cluster with Docker Desktop. I can run multiple clusters as multiple containers instead of my Docker. Yes, that's a good thing. I just personally do not have the need to have a multi-cluster setup locally, because when I get to the multi-cluster situation, I'm already in cloud. It's so cheap, it's so fast. I don't want to do those things locally. But I'm talking about me, not necessarily other people, right? But I can understand the advantage. Multi-cluster simulation locally, great. And another one is that you can load the images from file systems so that you speed up, to avoid pooling images. Which is also not a big deal because Docker Desktop is caching those images anyway. So once you pull them, they're there, unless you remove them. So if I would be a Linux user, I would see Kind as something great. I don't see it for the rest. And I know that people were throwing already stones at me for that. I spent time, but I haven't spent with Kind to say that maybe I'm wrong either. Maybe there is a magic beyond multi-cluster support.
So, in case you're new here or you're watching the replay, all the links for everything we're looking at today are down in the description. So, do you want me to make you less sad and move on from minikube?
Yep.
And Kind? Yep. Okay. All right. I don't know if this is less sad or not. Have you heard about this whole dependency confusion thing that's been going on past few weeks?
No, not really. I haven't caught that one.
Do you understand what the concept is?
Yeah.
Okay. In case you're watching this and you're not sure, basically, if let's say I'm PayPal, I'll use this as an example, and I developed an internal NPM package, and I'm always pulling from my internal registry, but let's say somebody else created that exact same named package out on the global NPM distribution. They could put stuff in there. Well, if I didn't fix my build process within PayPal, generally it's going to pull from the outside world before it looks inside. So that's dependency confusion. It's a very bad way of saying it, but that's roughly it. So the Linux Foundation this week kicked in, along with Google, a project called sigstore. And it's at sigstore.dev. And it's still like really new, but this is signing things. The other way I look at this is it's sort of like let's encrypt for your packages. It's a very not a great analogy, but roughly, primarily because of it being Linux Foundation. So right now all they have is just some of this documentation about learn more. As of 227, a working transparency log, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to find out more, there's a Slack workspace for that. I think this is going to be probably the big deal of 2021. This is like if you're getting pen testing done against your SaaS application, basically you're paying somebody to try to hack you, this is probably going to be one of the things they try to put into place now. It's like, okay, what are the packages that you're building? If they can figure out what packages you're building and they find out, oh, this is custom, or it's your namespace and there's nothing. It's sort of like, the other way to think about it is registering domain names. Let's say you could register domain names multiple places. One that's private and one that's public. Well, I already have my private one, but I never acquired my public one. This would allow people to get the publics of that.
And it's something that potentially should become, I like the analogy with Let's Encrypt, no matter how actually accurate it is or isn't. But I like the aspect of that analogy in terms that this, or I don't know whether this specific project, but something like that should probably become a norm, something that we don't even think about anymore, or it's simply there, kind of, you know. Same like Let's Encrypt, I think will be going more and more towards being literally everywhere, that you're opting out. I think that in a year or two, we will be opting out from Let's Encrypt instead of opting in. Kind of simply, oh, you want Google Cloud, Google cluster or private cluster or this or that. It has, whichever Kubernetes platform you choose, I believe it will have Let's Encrypt or Cert Manager to be more precise, which is implementation for Kubernetes, just simply there. And if you don't like it, you change it for something else. But you cannot not have TLS by default in a way. And probably we will, hopefully we will go the same thing for packages.
That would be really nice. But there's 3 projects under the community tab if you haven't looked at it yet. That's the transparency log they talked about. And it's been out there for a few months, it looks like. Cosign, I haven't even looked at this one yet. This was the container signing. Container signing, verification, and storage in an OCI registry. And how do you do it? Cosign, generate key pair. Gee, this looks pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Can we make that any more complex? Probably. Should we? No. Well, actually, this one probably is a little bit of a hassle without having run it. It's like you have to pass in the password for the private key, which in this case you would want to have passwords for your private key, in my opinion. Like I wouldn't want to have an open private key in this case.
That defies the purpose of all stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Allows you to fake it.
Right. So sigstore, I think this is going to get more press as the weeks go on here. Let's move to microplane. We were talking about this before we started today. You said you had seen some clients in the past that were basically writing this.
It took me time to realize what it is. Yeah, this is of all the links we have here. This is the one that is to me most exciting. It seems like a tiny little tool that it's not a groundbreaking, earth-shattering something, but I cannot explain how many times I needed something like this. How often does it happen that you want to change something in more than one repo?
Yeah, like this animation that's running right here, they're upgrading Golang to 1.9.
For example.
For example, right.
Let's say that you decide now to, let's say that you're already running in Kubernetes and you want to start using Istio, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have like 570 different charts in 570 different repositories. You probably want to use something like this to inject. Hopefully, does it make I haven't tried it yet enough. Does it make a PR? PRs would be awesome.
I think that was one of their options. Here, let me go back over here. Currently, it only supports GitHub and GitLab, so no Bitbucket at this point. Yes, open a pull request.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Kind of like, hey, we just switched, let's say, to Linkerd just because we mentioned it, and now I'm going to make a pull request in all the repositories, and then the owners of those repositories can choose whether to accept it or no.
Okay, so now that I've actually had time to think, how is this any different than Dependabot?
It's a very similar thing, but except that this is Dependabot is very focused on dependencies, right?
Right. Okay.
This is a more general tool. Hey, I want to modify more than one repo. What I'm going to modify depends on me. It's my choice, right?
Yeah.
So yes, if I would like to update dependencies, then Dependabot is probably a better choice. When I said we want to inject.
Go back over here. We want to go to
Helm
Golang
templates.
1.9. Yeah, or Helm. Yeah, exactly.
Now, if there is a service to do that, then why not use a service to do that? So to me, this is more like a catch-all, right? Kind of if it's a dependency, Dependabot. If it's this, then that. Else, this tool.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that.
Yeah, their example here was when we recently updated from Go 1.8 to 1.9, it meant making the same change to 200 repositories. Do you want to do that? No, you don't.
Yep.
Do you want it as a PR? Yes. Right? Just to make sure. It's like I'm not willing to go in and manually make the change to 200 repositories. I am willing to review the PR for that in 200 repositories.
It really depends on how those things are organized. Now we can have a discussion whether that makes sense or no, but there are cases where a team is responsible to, like, just use the same example, to keep Golang up to date, and then it's directly pushed to the master. That's it. Right. Now, we have also the case that different teams are responsible for repositories, then it's a PR.
Yep. And it looks like they were using Circle CI here, but it's basically, here's the plan, whatever the switches are here, but then they're basically just doing an inline sed.
Yeah.
So
sed is the mother of all changes.
Speaking of which, Kenny, if you're watching this on replay, Kenny's one of the guys I work with. He did a sed thing today that he was piping sed to sed, and I counted 6 times that it piped sed to sed to sed to sed to sed.
I do the same thing.
Golly.
I mean, if I have more than one thing to change, I'm incapable of writing sed that changes more than one thing, a single command.
It's hard.
And that's what pipes are for, right? Kind of, that's the beauty of it.
Yep.
Why would I not pipe 6 times instead of creating sed that changes 6 things?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, this looks interesting. Microplane. In fact, I was just thinking of a use case here that I don't mind talking about. Is I know a number of the Jenkins plugin developers, and a lot of the developers are maintainers of multiple plugins at the same time. And this could be a useful thing for, okay, here's the suite of plugins I maintain. Let me go do this. That's not a dependence. That's not a dependabot type answer. I don't know. Seems interesting. I'll be sending that over later today to
Me like
somebody
it.
else. Yeah, good idea. Speaking of liking it, what about this whisper secret? This felt a little weird at first, but then it was like, And it's basically to allow or disallow information leakage through terminal history, shoulder surfing if we ever get back into being able to shoulder surf again. I think that'll be 2022 still. But, and again, it's like, this is a very normal looking command that you would run, right? kubectl create secret. Actually, let me go back down. Create secret, my secret, from literal, right? How many times have you done this, Victor?
I cannot even count that far.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is this is a very normal looking process. But if somebody was to get to your shell and your history, it leaked.
Yes. Now, I have a beef here with kubectl, right? If this example would be kubectl, echo and then the whole YAML for a secret that has some values and then pipe it to kubectl apply, this amazing great. This is still amazing great no matter what. But kubectl was not supposed to allow me to do that in the first place.
Right.
The one that you have marked right now, right? Kubectl create secret Docker registry. It should be an input field, or at least allow me to not specify Docker passport, to leave that empty, and to ask me for it.
Right. Which is what they've implemented it in this plugin.
Exactly. So a plugin is that's why it's awesome. Basically, it is implementing something that was supposed to be there in the first place.
Yeah. Come on. Even the MySQL CLI does this. You can choose to put the password in, or if you don't put it in, it's going to prompt you for it.
Yeah.
That's some 10. Okay, I was going to say 101. Let's call it 102 level type stuff.
But it's I don't know. It's been a while I used MySQL. Does it prompt you in open or with asterisks?
Asterisks.
Okay. Cool.
Actually, it is, actually, if I remember right, it doesn't even render anything at all.
Exactly.
It's quiet. So
that's how it should be.
yeah. So, but what you just said here, it seems like kubectl should be fixed to fixed.
I understand why, because kubectl doesn't really distinguish secret from deployment, from replica set, from pod. For kubectl, that's all the same. Hey, this is the specification. I should allow you arguments depending on the specification of the resource that you are dealing with. Now that specification should have, is this a string or integer or a secret? And if it's a secret, ask me for it.
Yeah. Just trying to see what he's doing. Of course he's using Cobra. Who doesn't use Cobra if they're a CLI?
It's a golden standard.
That's who we need to get on, is Steve Francia. Do you think we're big enough to where he would talk to us? No, probably not.
I don't know. Who is Steve?
He's the one that created Cobra.
Okay.
SPF 13. You don't know him. You know him by his handle, right? Not by his name.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this one I saw before this popped in to me this week, and I was questioning it when I first saw it, and then I got this, and I started questioning even more. Did you ever figure it out? Actually, let me open this in. You're muted if you're talking.
I wasn't talking, but no,
Okay.
I didn't figure it out. I'm guessing what it does. Basically, it allows you to run a container that is simulating or accessing system level stuff. I was surprised how, and this, it's not only this project, how often I see projects that actually do not explain in introduction what it really is.
Yeah.
For a simple-minded people like me. Now, I understand that there are people who are not simple-minded, who understand things much better than I do. But hey, I'm a human as well.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of says, it goes into it here, it's an open source container runtime, aka Run C, originally developed by Nestybox that enables Docker containers to blah, 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 blah. But then we have to get in 6 paragraphs here. It's like Sysbox was forked from Run C in 2019 and has undergone changes. I still don't get it.
No, I mean, you see in the command there that they're specifying custom runtime. So they assume that in that example that you have in your Docker or Docker desktop, presumably, both Docker container runtime or whatever it's called, then that one, and then you select that one for, I don't know, sounds.
Well, it says, okay, in
confusing.
this container, you can now run systemd, Docker, Kubernetes. This goes back to kind, I think. Right? This
Maybe,
smells kind-ish.
Yeah.
So I didn't even draw that conclusion until right now.
I would.
And-
My first kind of reaction was, hey, I'm going to try it out and then understand what it does. But now, the more we go through it, my brain is thinking more, not worth the trouble.
Yes. Okay. So here we go. All right. Let's look at a hello world of this. So Docker run, runtime, and then Debian latest. So basically, just give me Debian. All right. So far, so good. It launches a system container. It looks like a regular container, but it's different. Within it can run application or system level software just as you would inside of a VM. It's strongly isolated against the Linux user namespace, or via the Linux user namespace. This feels like, oh, help me, what's the word I'm looking for? It feels like spaces, / spaces. It feels like, what was LXD? This feels like LXD.
Yeah. I don't know. To be honest, I'm spending a lot of time trying to avoid ever having the need to do like that in the first place.
Yeah.
That's my mission. I don't want to be in a situation where I need something like that.
Yeah, I haven't found, yeah, I'm not sure. Okay, anyway, let's move on from that because we're just spinning here. Our runtime, our -- runtime is not this. Let's move on. Lithops. This looked interesting to me. It's a multi-cloud serverless programming framework. But it's not like serverless or serverless framework or serverless.com, however you want to state that, or the other specific frameworks. This appears, it's Python only. And here's the thing. It doesn't require all the tasks of cluster provision and management. It just uses publicly available service platforms to run. That's it. So it's abstracted everything away. If we take a look at it, was it here? Yeah. So here are all the clouds that it already supports out of the box. So not much different than serverless from that perspective. But then it's just straightforward things.
I don't get it. I don't know whether I'm stupid today. Can you go back to the previous tab?
Yes.
So, one key difference with the traditional computing frameworks is that Lithops does not require cumbersome task of cluster provision and management. Cool. That's serverless. I understand.
Yep.
And then it says Lambda, Google Cloud Run. So, why exactly? So, those services are allowing me to do precisely what the first sentence says.
Yep.
Kind of like,
So
why do I need Lithops? I'm not saying that we don't. It's just very, very confusing because.
Yep. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about where it says here, where it matters. So again, it's only Python. So hyperparameter optimization. That feels very much a marketing term. I have no idea what that is. Object storage, blah, 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 searching, blah, blah, blah. But here, big data, Monte Carlos, genomics, model scoring. This is all the stuff that Python, through data science, makes a lot of sense about.
But here's what doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
Why is that something Python? We got to the point that those things are decoupled. The other day I listened to some conversation talk from Kelsey Hightower. I liked his explanation, right? Kind of, we invented envelopes. You put a stamp, you write the direction where it should go, and you put it to the mailbox, and you don't care whether that's transported with trucks, whether with planes, whatever, right? And I see containers in the same way. If you want to make something that is serverless, runs at scale, whatever, make sure that something is using containers, and it's my problem whether it's Python or Node.js or Java. We got to the point where those things are decoupled. And I do not want to go back to the place where, because to me this smells similar like when you had frameworks in Java before that would do TLS. As if I care about TLS in my application. No, I care about TLS, but not inside of my application. Same thing for this. Sounds like something that is just wrong. And I might be wrong. I haven't tried it yet, but that smells.
So, and I scroll down a little bit further here. So you can either use functions as a service. It also supports serverless container, i.e. GCR. I don't know. I mean, if you're able to support, looking specifically at Google Cloud right now, Cloud Functions, Cloud Run, Cloud Storage, all the stuff I was going on about, the more I'm saying the words, it's like it's really not much different than what already existed.
But
so I'm trying to figure out
Can you scroll up for a second? There, you see this bold one below the picture. With Lithops, you can code an application and run it unmodified in any cloud or compute backend. Yes, I can do it exactly with Lithops or without Lithops. We are at that point. I'm not saying that Lithops is not bringing value, but it's very confusing what it does, because I don't need Lithops to have a code of an application and run it unmodified in any cloud or computer backend. I have that already, right?
Right.
Am I too negative today? Maybe.
Maybe, because maybe you're being extremely negative today, and I'm just being a little naive. That's always a possibility. Because the more I'm reading, it's like I initially read this and like, okay, this is different than the others, and the more I'm reading it, it's like, no, not really. It's just like serverless.com.
Yeah.
It really is, except for the fact that it's Python only. Interesting. Okay. But if you're Python only, maybe it's something to look at. Okay. Really? GKE? And we're getting a Manscaped ad. We're not even getting paid for it. You know what? Okay, anyway. Autopilot. Man, I have seen so much chatter about Autopilot. Not just from the stuff that you've done. It's amazing, right?
It is amazing. Now, I must say first that I made that terrible mistake in that video. I said first fully managed. It's not. Fargate is the first fully managed. So there's the disclaimer out of the way. But Autopilot is awesome. Absolutely awesome. And the best we have right now.
Wait. Okay, justify what you just said. Fargate is not fully managed.
I mean, it depends. I had a lot of conversations since I published this. It really it creates nodes for you. So every pod you deploy to a Fargate creates a node in which it will run. You don't manage those nodes.
Okay.
Right? Now, but only if it's a node. But you need to specify a Fargate profile that says, hey, if a namespace is Victor, then use Fargate, meaning create nodes for me, manage nodes, and do all those things. But if you specify, if you use any other namespace, then it's not behaving like that. It's a very, very weird thing. Fargate basically allows you to, a cluster can be both used by, EKS cluster can be both used by Fargate and not Fargate.
Right.
And that's kind of very confusing to me.
Okay.
It makes very little sense.
Okay, fair enough.
So I just wanted to put out of there. I don't think that Fargate, I think that this is better than Fargate, but I cannot say that it's the first one, depending on the definition.
Okay. I'll stand down. That is reasonable. Have you had any other feedback from this that's worth talking about?
People are excited. There is a lot of excitement around it. And now there are always people who prefer that I need to have control myself. And then we start to go into discussions, okay, what is the level of control you want? Because if you create GKE standard, you're relinquishing part of that control already, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are, so there are like zillions of levels of control, I went as far as to say, hey, if you don't compile your own kernel, you're not having control, right?
If you didn't go and melt the iron ore to create your SSDs, you don't have control.
Yes. But generally, I think that for a significant percentage of people, this is amazing. For those who can run in cloud, let's start with that. Hey, why would you think about those things? And prices are comparable to...
So what did you find out about the pricing? Because we never dug into that.
Yes. Now, I run many different simulations in their pricing simulations. I couldn't make a conclusion based on, months or years of using it because it was just released. So I run simulation they have a pricing simulation, stuff like that. And then depending on how you swing it, it's more expensive. It's a bit more expensive or a bit less expensive than GKE standard. But there is no that out of the box, it's going to be more expensive no matter what. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And on top of that, you need to... the price also greatly depends on how optimized are your clusters. Kind of how do you set up cluster autoscaler? How much wasted resources you have on your nodes? And whether you're wasting more... So ultimately... And this is almost kind of a trick, right? Officially, Google is charging you for the resources your pods are using, right? That's what you're charged for. But the price of those resources is really based on what they expect will be node-based usage, right? They did the calculation. Hey, for these types of pods, we're going to use those nodes, and those nodes cost us like this, and so we're going to swing it and say you pay per pod, right?
Right.
And it really depends whether your usage, so you are ultimately one way or another paying for nodes, even though you don't see it like that. And the question is whether your cluster is better optimized to use those nodes or their cluster. And for many cases, I would say theirs.
Yeah.
And I'm being now really polite.
Yeah. We're getting close to the top of the hour. Pulumi, I said it right. Finally, Joe and everybody else at Pulumi, forgive me for always saying Pulumi. I don't know why I do that. It's habit. Pulumi. We need to get Joe back on.
Yeah.
He was a great
I don't
guest.
know whether he will want to come back on after me making this video.
I think Joe would be probably okay. I'll reach back out to him.
I think so as well.
I thought your review of it was reasonable. And
I tried not to trash it, really. That was not my intention. My main, I think, if I would have to summarize, is that I don't see a significant difference between Pulumi and Terraform, honestly. I see a significant difference between, let's say, Crossplane and Terraform. I do.
Yes.
But Pulumi and Terraform to me are the same tool. I know that there are differences, so don't start throwing stones. I know that there are some differences, but in a big picture, it's the same as Terraform, but manifest written in Go or JavaScript or what's or not instead of HCL. To me, that's the only significant difference.
Right.
Today. Now, what Pulumi is planning to do, that's a different story, right?
Yep.
And to me, for my use case, if I'm inventing now numbers, 5% of my Terraform definitions are very stupid if statements and loops and conditionals that are really, really stupid to write in HCL. And I think that Pulumi is better for that. But that's 5% of my definitions, not 95.
Right.
If 95% of my definitions would consist of conditionals, loops, what's or not, things that are not really appropriate for HCL, YAML, what's or not, then I would jump into Pulumi immediately. But that's not the case.
I think
Go ahead. I think that those people who have that as a case, not all, but many of those who have that as a case, I think that that's a smell of doing something wrong rather than something that should be fixed with Pulumi.
Yeah. I think one of the good use cases for that is, let's say you're a managed service provider and you're having to rubber stamp out things for everybody. I mean, sure, you could do it with Terraform, but Pulumi may be a better option because all you're doing is passing in variables at that point. Are you going to counter that?
You would be right if you would ignore the option of creating Terraform modules. So if I would be a provider, I would create a module that actually allows me to specify only those 3 things that are different between providers. So my Terraform definition would be 3, 4, 5 lines altogether, right?
Yep.
Because everything else would be abstracted because, hey, we just changed the size of nodes. I'm inventing now from one customer to another, right? And why would I have the full definition? Of course you shouldn't. You create a module, and then you use that module, which uses whichever other stuff should be used. So
here's the way I think about it is if you are, especially if you're in the managed service provider thing, or if you're within your company or multi-cloud, you need to be using Terraform or Pulumi, period.
Yeah.
Hands down. Pick one. You're not going to go wrong with either one. It's just a matter of what is your skill set internally. Do you have people that can write TypeScript or whatever the other languages are for the environments you need to integrate with that they have APIs available for? Versus you've got people that have been using Terraform for the past 6 years. Right. It's a very simple answer at that point. So
exactly. I mean, I to be honest, I don't have a good reason why somebody shouldn't use Pulumi. I don't have a good reason at all, to be honest. It's my personal preference. I think I like more HCL for that than Go, but no good reason not to use Pulumi. But to me, that is the core of the problem. If you have some usurper coming, trying to take over something that is established standard in a way, then I don't have a reason not to use this. Is not good enough in a way, if you understand what I mean.
Yep.
It needs to be more than that.
Yeah, it's got to be more than that. And I want to go back on what I just said. I mentioned if you're multi-cloud already, I would say even if you are single cloud today, you're only AWS, you're only GCP, you still should be using either Pulumi or Terraform and not the provider-specific ones, because what's going to happen when your CTO changes or some other event happens and now you have to move from AWS to Azure or from Azure to AWS. Not that you wouldn't have to rewrite anyway, but at least if you were working with a tool already that had the hooks you needed, at least you're not completely starting over from something completely different.
And I think that even providers gave up, to be honest. Like CloudFormation, even AWS is not using CloudFormation in their demos and trainings
Yeah.
to begin with. So unless it's training about CloudFormation, right? So CloudFormation, I cannot imagine anybody liking it really. Azure has the thing, I forgot the name, that was never even designed to be that level, but more like intermediary, basically, which Terraform probably uses behind the scenes anyway. And Google doesn't even have. Maybe does it?
Do they?
At least I haven't found anything.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So they all have APIs and CLIs, and basically are giving that away to Terraform, Pulumi, and similar tools.
API first. So
Yeah.
we talked about disaster recovery, and we ended with API first.
Oh yeah.
And I actually have another live stream I have to start in 30 minutes. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. And is there anything else I need to cover for today? I think we got everything else. If this was your first time here, you hung out, thanks for hanging out till the end. Down below as well, if you want to look into some of our courses or books, those are down there as well. And we've got a new batch of podcasts that we're getting ready to record. I haven't told you this yet. We need to record next week. Or if we didn't. If there's anybody that's on that, hey, we would like Darren and Victor to talk to X. As long as it's not Kelsey, because we can't get Kelsey.
Yeah.
Let us know. We'll see if we can track some people down. I'm trying to get a couple of authors on. There's a couple of people that I want to get, but I haven't gone after them yet. I'm going to do that this weekend, really this weekend.
I know a couple of nasty serbs that can make sure things happen for a small fee.
For a small fee. Okay, let's just let that be the end right there for a small fee. All right, thanks again, everybody. We should be back unless something changes. Victor, golly, okay, we've been doing this for almost a year. Once we get to that year mark, which was, I think, the second or third Friday in April, that's the one I'm counting as the first one. I will bring up a picture of what I looked like. Victor saw it last night or this morning. I don't remember when it was. Of what I looked like about a year ago. Yeah, I did. Maybe you didn't look at it. I sent it to you. It's fine. Don't worry about it. I sent you the link. Just to see what we looked like a year ago, where we're at right now, which isn't that much different. Where was I going with that? I had a reason for saying that. Now I don't remember what it was. It's Friday. I have another live stream to do, so let's let that be that. Oh, I remember what it was now. Dang it. So we've been doing scheduling of this week by week. And Victor told me last week, well, why don't you just set a recurring meeting for the same time, and then we'll change it if we have to. Mm-hmm. So that's what we did through the end of the year. So we've scheduled this through the end of the year for this time. Now, oh, by the way, time changes this weekend in the U.S. So we'll be closer next week for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be back to normal time again for people that are in EMEA. So
yep.
I lose an hour of sleep. That's not going to help me any this weekend. Okay. Thanks again, everybody. We will, Eric Osterman. Thanks, Neil. Podcast relation. Okay, Eric Osterman. Okay, I'll look that up. I don't know that name. Should I know that name? Do you know that name?
I don't know, but I don't know anybody's names. I'm just terrible with names.
What's my name? That's
Darin.
exactly.
But
right.
after first 100 times I remember. So I can tell you for certain that I did not speak with Eric Osterman more than 100 times.
Okay.
I would remember that.
Okay. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for hanging out with us today live, or if you're watching the replay, thanks again. We will talk to you again next week. And don't forget, the podcast comes out Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Not a fan. See ya.